Greetings, fellow scribes! Welcome back to the archive. This video is part of my series on the individual tribes of Werewolf the Apocalypse. I will be going into each tribe covering the same basic details, their history and mythology, their biases, strengths, weaknesses, and a bit of information about their camps, their sub-organizations within the tribes. Now, this is going to be a bit of a boilerplate for all of these, so I don't have to redo a video every single one. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as we talk about this tribe. Conniving backstabbers, master manipulators. This is what people think of when they think of the Shadow Lords. And they're not quite wrong. You see, way back in the ancient days, when the Silverfangs announced how they were anointed by Luna to lead, the Shadow Lords decided, yes, there needs to be leaders. There need to be dedicated people to lead. And we will totally back you, Silverfangs. But, O kings, there will be these unsavory things you need to have done. Things that if you did them, or if you outright asked someone to do them, that would tarnish your pelt, would tarnish your honor. And we shall take up that burden. And that is the basic gist of the Shadow Lords, right there. They don't lead. They have no interest in leading. When they're pushed into positions of leadership, they don't like it. Because their job is to be the ones who aren't being looked at, so that they can go do the stuff that needs to be done, so that the ones in charge can look like they're in charge. It's like the Shadow Lords never went after the emperors. They went after the advisors to the emperors. They didn't want to control the emperor. They wanted to control the senators. Because to them, that is where the real power was. Not in the person in charge, but in the people who advised that person. Who might be in control of smaller areas. But their real power was in their advisory abilities. One of the greatest Shadow Lords, in fact, was the Empress during the Byzantine Empire. You might have heard of her, Theodora, to the Emperor Justinian. But that's another story, another detail of them. Because when you go back to the ancient times, the prehistory, when you talk about the events of the Wars of Rage and the Impergium, the Shadow Lords don't think these were mistakes. They believe that the Wars of Rage were necessary because the other tribes were, the other changing breeds were not submitting to the wiser wolves. Now, in truth, they believe it's that they chose to turn their backs on their duties when the wolves asked them for their help and their service. Not quite. It's just the wolves didn't understand their duties, but that's a whole other kit and caboodle to talk about. With the Impergium, they believe it was a mistake to end the Impergium because it let humans become what they are today. Because it let the humans get to the point where they could be manipulated by both the Weaver and the Worm. And if they had stayed executing the Impergium, things would have been better overall. But again, the views of different tribes all differ on this, so this is just one of those instances where the Shadow Lords are one of the few tribes who actually don't think either the Impergium or the Wars of Rage were a mistake. Make of that what you will. Now, when you look at the history of the Shadow Lords, we generally think of them as coming from the Balkans, from the Slavic areas of Europe. And this is where they sort of settled down. They're the third tribe that had connections with the steppes of Central Asia. And in their case, they came into Europe with the Huns, the Vandals, the Visigoths. And they ended up settling in the Slavic areas. And then eventually taking part in the sackings and invasions by barbarians of Rome. And in these, they spread their kinfolk around North Africa, Spain, parts of France, Italy, all around that area. And that means when they started interacting with the rest of the world, they had a very diverse points of origin. And for the most part, the history with the steppes of Central Asia got left behind. Now, one of the more interesting things with them is Vlad Tepes. No, he was not a Shadow Lord, nor was he Shadow Lord Kin. But they started off supporting him. And this was because it was better the devil you know than the Ottoman Turks. At least that is how they saw it. And they were fighting the Turks because of how they did things. And then they realized just what Vlad Tepes was. And it was their manipulations that got him jailed for that 6 years during his time. And then when he came back, they solved the problem themselves, because he had been weakened by that time. And this is important because to them, as they looked back with hindsight, they realized having helped Vlad Tepes at all had been a mistake. And so when they came to the New World and they see the blood sacrifices of the Balaam, the Were-Jaguars, they see They see the Macaulay that look like images that they've had of the worm. And then they see the Camazotz that have their war form, the werebats. Their war form looked very much like some of the forms that the powerful vampires in Wallachia, in the Slavic areas, could take. And they made the decision that they weren't going to make the same mistake that they made with Vlad Tepes. And so they started killing. And that brought about the Second Wars of Rage. And they killed and they fought the Camazotz, the Balam, the Macaulay, and even some of the Uktena, driving the Balam deep into the jungles, driving the Macaulay into hiding. And they eradicated the Camazotz. And when the last Camazotz died, it uttered a cry that they describe not as the cry of the death of a single being, but the death of an entire species. It was the cry of extinction. And when it ushered out, when it was uttered, it reverberated through the Umbra. And every Shadow Lord knew in that moment just what they had done. And as a tribe, they all fell to their knees, weeping at the guilt of what they had done. And at that moment, they realized how mistaken they were. But it was too late. It was an error they could not fix. And so, once again, they looked inwards on themselves, trying to figure out what to do. But they continued on. They still had to deal with all the stuff they were dealing with. But something significant has come out of this. You see, when the last Camazotz died, the totem for them, the totem of Bat, went insane with grief, and it went fully to the worm. And in recent years, a Guru Theurge, a Shadow Lord Theurge, had completed an umbral quest that went into the depths of Malpheus, he and his pack. And they found Bat. And they reached some part of it that was still Gaian. And so there's a small but growing number of Shadow Lords who have taken Bat as their totem. A purified Gaian form of Bat. And they've been getting gifts from it. Some of these are similar gifts to the ones held by Black Spirals, but others aren't, as they're starting to bring back some of the gifts of the Camazotz from being the voice of Gaia. What happens with this, we don't really know. The Shadow Lords, like every tribe, have their share of camps. Most of the camps are just variations on how they manipulate people or why they manipulate them. There are two camps, though, that are extremely noteworthy. These camps are the Bringers of Light and the Judges of Doom. The Bringers of Light, their attitude is their job is to fight the worm. And they have this goal of destroying the worm from within. To do this, they do things like they infiltrate Pentex facilities, they pretend to be Black Spiral dancers to get into hives, and they do all sorts of deceptions and disguises and stealth tactics. And they get inside and they find out how these are set up. They find out, the security guard schedules, the defenses, all these things. And then they come out. And they go to a nearby Guru Sept. And they tell them how to fight it. And they might even go back in to undermine the defenses while the Guru Sept is attacking the hive or the Pentex facility or whatnot. And they do have some that fall to the worm. You can't be working that close to darkness without temptation working its way in. But enough of them stay loyal. In fact, the majority of them don't fall to the worm. When one does, other Lightbringers deal with it themselves. Because Shadow Lords fix their own fuck-ups. That's pretty much the only way to look at it, really. But they provide invaluable intelligence. Information that you can't get otherwise. And really, no other tribe could do this. Because even the Bone Gnars have this attitude of honor. And only the Shadow Lords have this belief that it is their duty, their job before Gaia, to do those things that an Honorable Guru can't, so that the Honorable Guru don't lose their honor. The other tribe, of course, is the Judges of... The other camp, of course, is the Judges of Doom. And they are judge, jury, and executioner of violations of the litany. That's pretty much the only way to call them. They might be merciful and only use punishment rites like Stone of Scorn or other things that are temporary and not lethal. But if you do something that's going to get a Judge of Doom killing you, if you're lucky, they'll just kill you outright. And not drop something like Gaia's jagged teeth on you. Because, oh yeah, they have this fun gift. And it's a low-level gift, so almost any member of the Judges of Doom is going to know it. This gift does this neat little thing of it forces you to admit your most grievous violation of the litany within the last lunar cycle. Yeah. So, yes, it makes you confess to what you've done wrong. And then the judges of doom handle it accordingly. And like I said, you better hope it's something that they believe is just a minor violation, and they'll just put some minor punishment rights on you. Otherwise, you're probably dead. But, again, when you have a tribe that accepts that its job is to do the dirty things that others can't do, well, you've kind of got to have someone whose job is to keep them in line. And that's what the Judges of Doom do. Now, speaking of litany violations, the Shadow Lords and Metis are an unusual situation. First, you have to look at how the Shadow Lords view the Metis. They see the Lupus Guru as having a greater connection to nature and Gaia. The Hamid Guru have a stronger connection to humanity, bringing insight from humanity in with them. And Metis are raised among Guru. They are raised among Guru. They have a greater understanding of Guru culture than either of the other two breeds. In fact, it's generally considered that they have a greater intuitive understanding about why things are done, what's done, than the other two could ever have, because they're raised among it. Now, you add to that this coming realization that all Guru are needed, that you can't just go killing them now, because every Guru is needed. And you end up with an odd situation that, yes, their parents committed the litany, committed a violation of the litany. Their parents did something truly horrible. But we can't just kill them. And we can't kill the child, because one, the child didn't really do anything wrong. But also, the child's going to understand us better, and we need it. So, they don't punish Metis, but being a Metis among the Shadow Lords means you are going to be constantly tested your entire life. Not just tested like drilled and, lore testing, but they're going to be looking for any sign of weakness in you the whole time. Actively looking for it. To find any justification that this Metis does not belong among the Shadow Lords. And from that, these Metis get better skilled at doing the things that Shadow Lords do. And because of this, it is said that many a grand plan by a Shadow Lord has hinged on the favor of a Metis. Because they hone their Metis into a more dangerous weapon. But this is really all I have to talk about with the Shadow Lords. They are a tribe of manipulators, yes. But they do it for a good reason. They don't do it for power for its own sake. They do it because they're seeking to protect the Silver Fangs, who, yes, it's seen that they have a rivalry, but they don't really. They just don't like what the Silver Fangs have become in the modern Knights. And they think if the Silver Fangs could get their act together, things might go better. So, with that, the next video in this series is going to be on the Wendigo. Until then, or until my regularly scheduled video, I just want to say, you all have fun and keep gaming.